Hello everyone, this is meteorologist Drew Montrell with Finger Lakes weather. It is about 4:30 p.m. on Friday, January 12th, 2018, and we're kicking off a hour-long live video stream here with the latest information on the winter storm that is starting to come into the Finger Lakes. All throughout the video I'll be answering your questions, so please go ahead and type them in onto the Facebook comments, and I will answer as many questions as I can. Again, I'm planning to be here till about 5:30. So let's start off by taking a look at the weather map and what we've got going on right now. And it looks like it just got out of position a little bit. There we go, we're back. So we can see that there is a cold front that's draped coming into the Finger Lakes now. This cold front extends all the way up into Canada and all the way down into the deep south. Very warm air out ahead of it, 50s and 60s across the Finger Lakes today, even some 70s showing up down in the Carolinas and further south. But it's a very sharp cold front, and once that front starts to move in, temperatures very quickly drop back into the 20s and teens, and then some even colder air up across the upper Midwest. Let's zoom in a little bit to the Finger Lakes here. I just got to get my Facebook window open so I can see your questions as they come in. So here's a look at the current temperatures across the Finger Lakes. We've got 43 degrees in Syracuse, still 59 at last report in Ithaca, but that colder air is starting to come in already. 30s into Penn Yan and Oswego, back into Dansville and Rochester as well. Temperatures are now falling below freezing back across western New York into Buffalo, and those areas there. So the cold air is coming, it's on its way. Many of you have been commenting throughout the afternoon as the cold air has been coming in. Those reports have been great, so I can track where the cold air is as it's been marching across the region. And I see also some comments coming in. That's great. Thank you for the reports. Like I said, I'll be answering questions the entire time, so feel free to ask if you've got travel plans or just wondering when I think the ice might be coming in. I'm going to switch over here to the radar, turn off the temperature background. I'll leave the temperature reports on there, and you can see this is a pretty colorful looking radar image already. The pink color you see here, I believe, is freezing rain. And the red is sleet. Might be one way or the other. This is a brand new program I've got, and I'm still getting used to it a little bit. But regardless, we do have frozen precipitation falling now across Erie, Cattaraugus, Chautauqua County, coming into Wyoming, Genesee County as well. Still rain in the Rochester area, but we probably will be changing over within the next hour or less to frozen precipitation. As this cold front continues to move east, the temperature areas that the temperature is still warm, it's going to very quickly drop about 10-15 degrees from the upper 50s back into the low mid 40s. Then it's going to be a slower, steadier drop through the upper 30s, then back into the mid and eventually low 30s. And it's once we get into the low 30s, that's when the trouble starts happening with the ice. I can switch over now to some of the graphics that I had in my blog post this morning. I definitely recommend you read that post. I've given a couple of updates throughout the day on it. You can find that in the description to this video, unless you're already watching on the post. A lot of information in there. I tried to really break down the different aspects of this storm and who would be seeing what and when. So I'm going to switch over now to the map I produced showing where I thought the ice would be at different times, keeping in mind that we're seeing this ice line right about at the Batavia area right now. That's about how far east the ice has come. And here on the map that I produced this morning, we can see that we're actually about an hour and a half slow here. So I thought the ice line would be about where it is now, between 2 and 3 o'clock. It's now 4:30, so we're two to an hour and a half behind schedule. So that's going to impact all these times that I put on the map here this morning. And this is not at all surprising. You can see over here in the corner, I say the actual time might vary up to 1 or 2 hours. This is to be expected any time you get down to exact times of arriving weather systems, 12 hours or more out. So for this map, I would definitely add about 2 hours onto the time. So Rochester, maybe not quite 2 hours for there. I would say definitely by 5:30, 6 o'clock, that's probably when we'll start to see the ice coming into Rochester. Geneva, 7:30, 8 o'clock. Getting down towards Ithaca, it's probably going to be more like 9:30 once the ice gets down here. So that is a little bit of a change from what we were expecting this morning. It's not a surprising change at all. This definitely was expected. As far as when that ice ends and turns over to snow, these times I don't have a whole lot of reason to change these at all. It might end up being just a little bit later just because the overall storm pattern is a little bit slower. But generally we're looking for the change from ice to snow around midnight or later across most of the Finger Lakes. So how much snow are we expecting to fall? I am still expecting a large area of very heavy snow to develop once that ice turns over to snow. Much of the northern and northwestern Finger Lakes looking at well over a foot of snow. Couple areas may approach 20 inches. You can see I've got 20 inches listed for Geneva. I think this storm will probably max out around the 20-21 inch range. Maybe somebody will get close to 2 feet, but not much more than that. Many of these areas in here will be more like 16, 17, 18 inches. The most likely areas that might see those 20-inch marks, kind of in this corridor here from Geneva up towards Oswego, and then right along the shore of Lake Ontario as those north winds come down and Lake Ontario adds just a little bit extra moisture into this storm, producing some slightly higher snow totals there. That's also why you see this kind of western extension of the pink coloring to the northwest of Rochester. That's accounting for some of that lake effect. Now across the eastern Finger Lakes, that's where things are really messy. It's still a low confidence forecast here. It's really going to come down to how quickly the snow and the sleet changes over to snow. It's going to be a very tight gradient. It's very easily could see some places getting a foot and then go 20 miles to the east, and it might not even be 6 inches on the ground. So that's the kind of razor thin margin we're dealing with here, and trying to pick up exactly where that's going to be is really next to impossible at this time. So if you're in the eastern Finger Lakes, these amounts you see, Ithaca 12 inches, Cortland 8 inches, that's my best guess. That's the forecast I'm going with, but don't be surprised if we end up on a different either side of that. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot more than a foot in the Ithaca area. This is kind of a ceiling amount for them. If the storm shifts a little bit further east and that cold air gets in quicker, Cortland could possibly get up towards a foot. I think more likely is the sleet might hang on and reduce these snow totals some. But that's just kind of my gut feeling based on the slowness of the storm moving in so far. So if this map's going to end up wrong, I think it's probably going to be in this area, and we'll probably just tighten up that gradient and move the lower amounts a little bit further to the west. But it is, again, very uncertain, so we'll see what happens. Let's see what sort of questions we've got coming in. Let me just get my window set here, so hopefully I can see them. Let's see. Marie Ann, what do you think Sunday morning will look like? The good news is this storm's going to lift out midday Saturday. There's going to be a little bit of a lake effect response behind the storm, especially Saturday evening and maybe into early Sunday. Looking at the northern Finger Lakes again, and then down into the central Finger Lakes, basically between Owasco and Seneca Lake, somewhere in there. What I've seen on the models of the lake effect band is it's going to kind of move around a little bit. So not a whole lot of snow for any one area, and kind of a transient squalls here and there. But then the sun should eventually work out, and as we go on through Sunday morning, and outside of that lake effect band, it'll also be sunny as well. So really not too much going on Sunday, which is great news. I need to try to see if I can get a better look at the comments here coming in the video. It's only showing me the last 4, so if I don't see your question right away. Ryan Eggleston, missed the start of the feed. When do you see the rain turning to ice in Ithaca? Still 6:45? No, Ryan. One of the first things I explained is that things are about 1.5 to 2 hours behind schedule. So I can switch back over to the ice map. So I had 6:45 in Ithaca. I'm now thinking it's probably going to be closer to 8:30, 9 o'clock for the Ithaca region. And that's kind of across the board, that 1.5 to 2 hour delay. Wendy Montrell, how bad will the winds be during this event? We're expecting winds to start gusting this evening to 30, 35 miles per hour. That's going to continue through much of the day tomorrow. So once the precipitation does turn over to snow, all that snow is going to be blowing around, and that's going to keep travel conditions less than ideal even after the snow stops tomorrow towards the midday. Let's see. What is it going to look in Geneva by 6 a.m. Saturday? Tammy Schaefer. Probably going to be seeing heavy snow ongoing in Geneva. Snowfall rates at that time could easily exceed 1 inch per hour, maybe even up towards 2 inches per hour. Again, that's right in that corridor where I'm thinking some of the heaviest snow is going to fall. So it's going to be very poor travel conditions, if not impossible travel, with the snow and the blowing snow as well. Melissa, Liverpool, are we in 13 inches or more? Hard to tell. Let me switch back over to the snow map. Yeah, Liverpool ends up kind of there again in that gradient where it's getting really hard to tell which side it's going to fall into. They're in the shading for 12 to 16 inches. Again, on that gradient, probably around a foot. That's kind of the maximum amount I'm thinking. It could end up a little bit lower as well. So again, the eastern Finger Lakes where these colors are close together, it's going to be really interesting to see how it all unfolds. Definitely not very high confidence in these areas. So let me know how it ends up tomorrow for you up there in Liverpool, Melissa. Okay, I'm going to switch back over to the radar and temperatures here so we can see what is going on. Now, anytime you see a radar that gets color-coded based on the precipitation type, you have to understand that this is just a computer algorithm that's trying to determine what sort of precipitation is falling. Now, since the National Weather Service upgraded their radars a few years ago to send out radar beams both horizontally and vertically, that gives the radar a much better picture of what shape the precipitation particle is. And so that makes it a lot easier to try to determine what types of precipitation are falling. But these computer algorithms aren't perfect. You can see there's kind of, I can zoom in here a bit, and there's this kind of artificial fuzziness during the transition zone and some kind of weird shapes that show up. That's all just a product of the radar program trying to determine what types of precipitation are falling. But again, I believe the pink on this program is representing freezing rain. Red is sleet, I believe, and then the whites and blues are snow, and the greens, of course, are rain. Let's see. Ray's got a question. Will the snow be heavy, wet snow, or more of a powder? That's going to be an interesting thing to watch as well, Ray. Kind of the situation that we've got here is it's going to get very cold at the surface. The cold air favors a fluffy snow, but up aloft there's going to be a lot more warm air, and that's why we've got all the sleet and freezing rain as well. And so that's going to favor a bit of a wetter, heavier snow. So I think it's probably going to end up being somewhere in the middle. Early on, I think there'll be more of a bias towards a wet, heavy snow, and then later on in the storm, once the cold air gets deeper and we lose that warm air aloft, it'll probably turn into more of a fluff towards Saturday morning. And then, of course, the winds will definitely blow all that fluff around as well. So let's go back to the live look at what we've got going on here. Temperatures in Buffalo are now down to 30 degrees. Winds are out of the northwest now at 15 miles an hour. So those northwest winds are coming in behind the front, bringing in the colder air. Rochester is still above freezing at 36 degrees. We got a report down here of 32 degrees in Olean, so freezing temperatures starting to come into the western southern tier as well. Meanwhile, over the eastern Finger Lakes, we're still quite warm, 59 degrees in Ithaca. At the last report, 57 in Cortland. Starting to cool down quite a bit in Syracuse at 43. It's now 42 at my house here in Groton, so I'm guessing these 59 and 57 are getting to be older reports. And we can actually look at how the temperature has changed over the last several hours. Let me just get that loaded up here. And the blue colors are where the temperature has cooled down. The oranges and reds are where it's stayed steady or gotten warmer, and we can actually investigate, see how this is. So over the last several hours, it looks like the temperature in Cortland just updated, so now it's down to 46. Not a big surprise there. So temperatures have been pretty steady today until the cold front comes in. We've been sitting in the mid and upper 50s and low 60s all day. But this is a 6-hour temperature difference, and look at that difference, 20 degrees, 21 degrees, a very substantial and quick drop. I can actually turn this down to, let's just do a 2-hour difference, and you can see where that front is and where that quick drop in temperature is. It's actually a bit ahead of the blue line the program's painting on here, but a 15, 16 degree drop in a matter of an hour or two. Definitely working across the central Finger Lakes and now into the eastern Finger Lakes as well. We'll get some updated data as we continue on through this program. Got some more reports coming in of different temperatures. It's 40 on Snyder Hill. Thank you, Sue. 63 still in Lysel. Thank you very much for that, Tracy. So you can see still a very sharp temperature gradient exists along this cold front. Let's turn that off, and I'm going to turn the front off as well and the temperatures, and I'm going to now display some of the different hazards that the National Weather Service has issued for our area. We'll start off with the flood warnings, and you can see that there are quite a few counties, almost the entire Finger Lakes and Western New York area are under flood warnings. Now some of these are just for individual rivers, like in Cortland County it's just the Tiafneoga River south of Cortland that's under a flood warning. This program shades the whole county though, but many of the counties in Western New York, the entire county is considered under a flood warning. Most of the flooding is a result of ice jams. As the temperatures warmed up, as the waters began to rise from the heavy rain, the ice from the last couple of weeks and all that bitter cold began to break up. And once that ice breaks up, it gets caught on bridges or on bends in the river bank, and that causes the ice to pile up. Once the ice piles up, the water backs up behind it. Then when and if that dam breaks, then all that water rushes downstream as well. So you get flooding both before and after the ice jam, and these are very rapid floods that happen. The water can rise very, very quickly with that as well. Let's see. We got a question in Branchport, Hammondsport, expect to get as much snow as Rochester. A lot of updates saying Yates looking at higher accumulations. I can look at my snow map for you. I've got these areas in similar situations, kind of on that edge. So probably looking at 14, 16, 17 inches, both in the Rochester area and down towards Branchport, Hammondsport. Maybe a little bit less down towards Hammondsport. You can see that the snow map kind of bends back to the west here. I think some of the warm air is going to get caught in this area and be a little bit slower to get out of the southern tier. So that's why I have snow amounts a little bit less down in that area as well. That and just as the storm strengthens and moves up the front, I think there's going to be just more precipitation up in this area as well. So I am now going to turn off the flood advisories and warnings, and we'll display the winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings, just as a quick refresher for who has what. These are the winter storm warnings, basically the entire Finger Lakes, western New York area, in the pink shadings under winter storm warnings for varying amounts of snow and ice, according to the Weather Service. And then there are a few winter weather advisories as well in purple, down to the southeast, and that's where there's going to be more sleet and not as much snow accumulation. So those thresholds for a warning aren't met. But for most of the Finger Lakes, winter storm warnings are in effect. So I'm going to, we've been at this for about 20 minutes. I'm going to zoom back out. Just let me turn off the layers here. And I want to turn back on the front and the temperatures. Give it a second to load here. So like I said at the top of the broadcast, we've got this large front that extends all the way down from Canada through New York State into the Ohio Valley and then down into the south and the Gulf Coast, and if you want to be technical, it actually extends across the Gulf of Mexico and all the way down into Mexico itself. But the main part of this storm is still developing and still yet to come, and that is this low right here over Tennessee. And you can see this nice spiral around the low. This is a very classic look for a low pressure system. Definitely means this low is wrapping up and starting to strengthen. So what's going to happen is, as this cold front continues to march to the east, this low pressure is going to continue to strengthen and move up it. And it's going to follow the front into the mid-Atlantic, and then it's going to pass to our south and east. So this area back here over western Kentucky and Indiana, where there's some heavy snow already falling, this area is going to continue to intensify, and that's what's going to move northeast into the Finger Lakes overnight tonight and through most of the morning on Sunday. Or most of the morning on Saturday, excuse me. So that's kind of the bigger picture of what we've got going on. Zoom back into the Finger Lakes here so we can do the radar here. Ray's got another good question. Why such a concentration of snow in the Finger Lakes region? Again, that's kind of what I just explained, as we're kind of right in the sweet spot for that low pressure system. As it moves to the north and passes just to our southeast, you can actually already see there's dry air wrapping around into the system. You can see, like in the Atlanta area, there's this pocket of dry air out ahead of the system. That's going to move into eastern New York and miss us. So we're going to have a long duration of very heavy precipitation from this system, and that's why the Finger Lakes is kind of right in the background. Let's see. Ryan's asking, do you foresee a travel ban Saturday morning for those of us with work? That's really hard to say. That's, depends on local municipalities and governments. So just like with school closings, you're dealing with individual people's perceptions of how the weather's going to be. Personally, I would not want to be traveling Saturday morning, and I've throughout the day been helping people decide what their travel plans should be tonight and through Saturday, and I've definitely been trying to keep people off the roads as much as possible Friday night and into Saturday morning. I think the road travel conditions are going to be very, very poor. Some areas will probably have near impossible road conditions. So there probably will be some areas that'll go ahead and institute at least travel advisories. Usually those are kind of non-binding, meaning the government's advising you to stay off the roads, but they're not going to do anything to you if you go out there. All-out travel bans are a lot more rare. We'll just have to wait and see. what happens with those, Ryan. I'm going to zoom back into the Finger Lakes here and turn the temperatures back on so we can see how the updates are going. And I'm actually going to turn a loop on here. There we go. I thought I lost my connection for a minute. I'm going to turn the radar off. And we can see the cold air seeping into the Finger Lakes over the last 3.5 hours. You see those temperatures rapidly falling. Penn Yan's a pretty good example. They started out pretty warm at the beginning of the loop and are now pretty cold as that cold air comes in. Temperatures in Buffalo at the start of this video were around 30. They're now down to 28. Now that the sun is setting, I do expect temperatures to start falling a bit more quickly behind the front. We're starting to lose the daytime heating. And this blue coloring here, I believe, is kind of the 30-degree mark. You can see that's starting to seep closer and closer into the Finger Lakes. And if we turn the radar back on, you can see the radar is now trying to say that there's some frozen precipitation in the Rochester area. I can see if this part will work if I turn on the weather reports. It's just saying fog in Rochester right now, but that might be a little bit of an older report that we've got. Mary is asking, are we expecting ice? Welcome to the broadcast, Mary. Yes, we are definitely still expecting ice. That's what we're looking at right here in these pinks and red colorings, mixes of sleet and freezing rain. I believe most of this is sleet so far. Sleet is, neither sleet or freezing rain are very fun, but sleet I would think is definitely preferable. The difference between sleet and freezing rain: sleet falls as ice pellets. It's going to bounce off your car and telephone poles and tree branches. Freezing rain falls as a liquid and then freezes once it hits those things. So it's the freezing rain that coats the power lines and the tree branches and helps pull them down. I mentioned this morning that I was thinking that the window of opportunity for freezing rain was maybe going to be small, and it was maybe going to be more of a sleet event. Hopefully that is what we are seeing coming to fruition here. Just checking the latest report out of Rochester, and the actual weather station there is still reporting rain. Dansville is reporting snow though. So you can see that this radar is trying its best to determine what types of precipitation there are, but it can only do so much to figure out exactly what precipitation is falling. Donna's asking what's the difference between sleet and hail. Like I just said, sleet are the ice pellets. They form when a snowflake falls into a pool of warm air, melts it into a raindrop. Then that raindrop falls back into a thick layer of cold air near the surface. That cold air freezes it into a little ice pellet. Hail, on the other hand, requires a thunderstorm to develop, or at least similar conditions to a thunderstorm. What happens with the hail is you get a little ball of ice up in the cloud. Thunderstorms are very turbulent, so there's a lot of strong winds going up and down. And it catches that hail, lifts it up into the storm, it gets more ice around it, falls down. When it becomes heavy, winds pick it back up, and it just keeps kind of bouncing up and down in the storm, getting bigger and bigger and bigger until finally it falls down out of the cloud. So that's hail. Sleet, again, is just the ice pellets, and freezing rain falls as rain and then freezes on the surface once it makes contact. Kelly's asking what time do you expect it to hit the Watkins Glen area. I'm going to switch over to my ice map. Originally I was thinking around 6 o'clock. Now that's an hour away. The sleet and ice has definitely made pretty good progress over the last half an hour since I started this video. When I started it had just gotten to the Batavia area. Now we're getting some frozen precipitation in the form of snow, actually, all the way in Dansville. Wouldn't be surprised if that starts turning to sleet. So it's starting to catch up with my map a bit. I do still think at least a little bit of a delay we should expect. So originally Watkins Glen was around 6 o'clock. Now I'd be more inclined to say 6:37, maybe even as late as 7:30. And again, it's still just kind of a guessing game at this point. There's going to be differences from place to place depending on a lot of different factors, both at the surface and aloft in this storm. Okay, Lisa is asking how the weather is going to shape up in the Adirondacks and Utica. I can swing on over to that area. You start to see some of that cold air is starting to work into the North Country as well, Lisa. Right now Utica is still at 54 degrees, and it's also 54 degrees up at Saranac Lake. So still very warm, but same thing as here in the Finger Lakes. That icy precipitation is going to come in. I believe if I can, I think there's a way to draw. I'll just use my mouse to kind of show you. I believe the snow sleet line tonight is going to set up somewhere in this kind of general area. So for areas west of this, back towards Watertown, Messina, kind of just to the west of the Adirondacks, a lot of heavy snow, same thing what we're expecting down here towards Geneva in that area. I forgot to switch it over to the right program, sorry about that. So as I was trying to show you, the snow and sleet line I believe is going to set up roughly Tupper Lake, Utica, that's general vicinity. Yep, right here, there's my mouse cursor. So these areas to the west of that, probably going to get heavy snow. The Tug Hill area, back in the St. Lawrence Seaway. Areas to the east, it's probably going to be a lot of mixed precipitation, a lot of sleet, maybe some freezing rain in some of the higher elevations, since they won't have such a thick layer of cold air for that precipitation to fall into. So it's going to be pretty messy up in these areas. And let me just switch off the radar and switch on the alerts so we can see if they've got winter storm watches or winter weather advisories up here. So mostly winter storm warnings, southern Adirondacks winter weather advisories. So same sort of deal that we're dealing with here in the eastern Finger Lakes, where it's right in that edge and it could really go either way. Caitlin's husband is in Lake Placid, wondering if it'd be safer to drive home to Ithaca tonight or tomorrow afternoon and evening. I would definitely recommend waiting for the late afternoon or evening tomorrow. My concern is once this ice comes in over the next few hours, that travel is going to become very, very difficult. And like we just saw on the radar, the same things happening up towards the Adirondacks is happening down here. So travel all the way from Lake Placid down to Ithaca is going to become very, very treacherous within the next couple of hours. And I just don't think that he can necessarily make it back in time before that happens. The storm should be pulling out by midday on Saturday. There's going to be some blowing snow through Saturday afternoon, but the road crews will have a time to get out there and clean it up. And I would personally take that trip tomorrow rather than tonight. Charlie's asking how much snow for Ontario County. Let me switch over to the snow map for you, Charlie. Ontario County is kind of in the bullseye of this storm. I'm expecting around 20 inches in Geneva in that area. Probably a little bit less over towards Canandaigua, more like 18, 17 inches. But this is kind of the favored area for this storm, just with the position of it and the influx of the cold air. So I think it's going to be quite a good storm for Ontario County, Charlie. Okay, so we've got about 25 more minutes. Again, I'm going to go until about 5:30. Please continue to send in your questions and I'll continue to answer them. Again, I'm Finger Lakes weather meteorologist Drew Montrell, and we are tracking the snow and ice moving into the Finger Lakes along this sharp cold front. Temperatures tumbling across the region. Much of the area is now in the 30s, and we're starting to see low 30s march into the western Finger Lakes with temperatures dropping back in the 20s with snow already now back towards Buffalo. Got a couple more new questions coming in. Tiffany, what's the snow accumulation look like for Elmira? Elmira's an interesting case. It's in that area where things are pretty uncertain. I've got Elmira at 7 inches right now. I could see that going either way. Could be maybe as high as 9, 10 inches at the most probably. If the sleet really hangs around in the southern tier longer, that number could fall down to 4, maybe 5 inches. So same case with the rest of the eastern Finger Lakes in this tight gradient. Things could really bounce either way, and we'll just have to wait and see. Betty's asking, when you say midday, what time are we talking? This is for the storm pulling out, Betty. Midday, I'm expecting the precipitation to really start to taper off in the Finger Lakes after 10 a.m. tomorrow. By noon, 1 p.m., it should be cleared out of the region. The later Saturday you can go without traveling, the better conditions are going to be. I would definitely stick to main roads. Rural areas are going to have to deal with a lot of blowing and drifting, and it's just going to take longer for the road crews to get out there. And another thing is temperatures tomorrow are only going to be in the low teens and upper single digits. So the rock salt, that's starting to get down to the temperatures where rock salt doesn't work so well. So there's going to be messy areas through tomorrow. But as the afternoon goes on, especially if we can get some sunshine out behind the storm in areas where there's not a little bit of lake effect snow, I think travel conditions will improve. Lisa has a daughter driving from Saratoga Springs to Canandaigua. Once she gets on the thruway, I think she'll be okay. I do think the thruway conditions generally should be okay tomorrow afternoon. Obviously, New York State is going to try to keep the thruway as clear as possible, and all the traffic should help keep conditions at least adequate. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect driving conditions, but I do think it'll be manageable by tomorrow afternoon. Brandon's asking, has the forecast changed for Cortlandville? Cortlandville is in that area where things are very uncertain, Brandon. I was saying towards earlier on in the broadcast that the ice is coming in. It was coming in a little bit slower. It's picked up a little bit now. But I still got the snow map up here. I've got 8 inches for Cortland right now. Same deal with Cortlandville. I could see that end up being lower if the sleet hangs on longer into the early morning hours. I could see that total going as low as 4 or 5 inches. Likewise, if the cold air comes in, the storm shifts a little bit further east. That 12 to 16 inch line is awfully close to Cortland as well. So it really could fall on either side of that, Brandon. So nothing's really changed for that area. It's just a really tough call on what exactly is going to happen. Christy, my husband is chaperoning ski club at Greek Peak. Currently, do you think they'll be able to travel back to Ithaca safely this evening? Usually stay until about 9 p.m. should they head back early. It wouldn't be a bad idea to head back a couple hours early, possibly. If I take a look at the ice map here, Ithaca and Cortland, I both had at 6:45. Greek Peak down in this area, probably closer to 7 o'clock. That's what I had originally. Again, things are a little bit slower. They've caught up a bit, but I would maybe say more 7:30, 8 o'clock is when we should see the ice and sleet start coming in. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to maybe try to get out of there 7, 8 o'clock, Christy. Marianne saying it went from 60 to 40 within an hour in Moravia. Thank you for that report, Marianne. It definitely is an impressive front. I'm going to turn on the temperature change again. It's just really incredible. So what we're looking at now is the 2-hour temperature change, and I can actually probe and see exactly what that change is. And this particular program is saying, 12, 13 degree drop. There's some pockets of 16, 20 degrees. This map shows over 2 hours, but most of this does happen in even as little as half an hour as that front comes through. You can go back now to the temperature colors if they'll display and load. There we go. So you can see those blues and greens are working their way southeast into the Finger Lakes. Down to 34 now in Rochester. When we started this broadcast, I believe they were around 39. Buffalo's dropped a couple more degrees over the course of this. 30s now, getting close to the eastern Finger Lakes. I've got 40 here in Groton. Looks like the program's doing a pretty good job. I'm showing 40.6, and this is saying about 40.9. 41 degrees in Cortland. Can zoom in a little bit closer and see if we can get Ithaca to report. Nope. Might be some problems with the reporting in Ithaca right now, so we don't have a temperature for there. But it's still in the 50s down in Binghamton, and you can see all that warm air that we had earlier today is getting shoved off to the southeast, and the cold air is starting to flood into the region. I can turn the radar back on, and I'll turn the color off. There we go. I'm just going to quick check the latest surface reports out of the region. Still reporting snow in Dansville, and it's showing rain still in both Wellsville and Rochester. Looks like sleet in Buffalo. These reports are about 20 minutes old now. So the radar is showing snow in Buffalo, but it might actually still be sleet back there. Let me get the Facebook questions back up. All right. So we've got about 15 more minutes for this broadcast. I'll be going off the air at 5:30. If anybody has any more questions, feel free to continue to ask them. I'd like to definitely point out again, in the Facebook description to this video is a link to the blog. I will continue to post updates there this evening as the snow and sleet moves into the Finger Lakes. But again, this is just the beginning of this storm. As that low pressure develops over the Ohio Valley and moves northeast along this cold front, there it is down in Tennessee still. This precipitation on the backside is going to fill in and get very heavy as the storm rapidly develops. So it doesn't look like a whole lot necessarily yet, but this is only going to increase throughout the night. So we're definitely expecting a long night of ice followed by snow lingering into tomorrow. All the details that you should need are in that blog post. If you just click on the link in the description of this video, or maybe you're watching the embedded version of this video right in the blog post. And this video will be available after we finish the live broadcast as well. So if you missed something, you can go back and watch it, or you can share it with your friends and family so they can still get some of this information as well, even if maybe they missed the live broadcast. Ryan's asking if I'll be back on air tonight or tomorrow morning. I don't have any more plans to do any more live videos tonight, Ryan. We'll see what tomorrow morning brings. There could be potential for maybe a quick video update in the morning. I am planning an entire new blog post in the morning detailing the remainder of the storm and what to expect for the rest of the weekend. So there will be that to look for tomorrow morning as well. Ed's saying, my daughter has to work in Ithaca till 9 tonight and drive home to Dryden after work. How will the roads be then? They're going to start to be getting icy, Ed. Anything after 9 o'clock, I definitely have some significant concerns about traveling as this sleet and ice moves into the eastern Finger Lakes. If I switch over to my ice map, again, these times are a little bit early. This is the map I made this morning, but by 8 o'clock I would expect there to be ice starting to show up in that area between Ithaca and Dryden. So she's going to want to definitely take it slow, give herself plenty of time, and hopefully things won't be too bad at 9 o'clock so she can get home safely. So I've got the temperatures back up onto the map here. Olean is now down below freezing at 30 degrees. Rochester is still holding out at 34, Penn Yan at 39. Zoom in a little bit, see if we can get Cortland. There we go, 41 degrees. At the last report in Cortland, 39 in Syracuse. Most of the Finger Lakes right now, except the far western Finger Lakes, is kind of in a lull for most of the precipitation. That's good news. We definitely don't need any more rain. Like I showed earlier, there's almost the entire region's under some sort of a flood warning because of the ice jam and small stream flooding. So we're pretty much done with rain at this point, which is good. That flooding threat is going to continue to persist due to runoff from the snow melt and the rain. And there could be ice jam flooding right into Saturday morning and even Saturday afternoon as well, even though our precipitation is going to turn all to ice and snow. Just as a quick refresher on what we're seeing here on this radar, the green colors are rain, whites and blue are snow, the pinks and red are different sorts of mixed and frozen precipitation. I believe the pink is freezing rain and the red is sleet. This is still a pretty new program to me, so I'm still learning some of the ins and outs of it. But that seems to make the most sense, where the freezing rain comes in first, then the sleet, and then the snow. And thankfully we're not seeing very much of the freezing rain showing up here on the radar. Again, the radar is only so good at picking out what sort of precipitation is falling, but we are expecting more sleet than freezing rain, which is good news because then we won't have to deal with power outages on top of everything else as well. About 10 more minutes left in this broadcast. And I definitely appreciate everybody tuning in. If you have any feedback, things you'd like to see in future broadcasts, I'm definitely hoping to do this sort of thing more and more and more over the coming months and years for Finger Lakes weather. A couple more questions coming in now. What time do you expect it to hit the Geneva area? Probably looking at another hour and a half for Geneva area, so 6:30ish, we'll say, for the ice to start moving into Geneva. And then once it starts, it's going to continue precipitating probably till 11, 12 o'clock tomorrow morning, tomorrow noon, with very substantial snow amounts in the Geneva area. Trudy's asking, how do you expect travel to be around Ithaca tomorrow? During the morning, Trudy, I expect very, very difficult travel conditions, if not impossible travel conditions, especially in the rural areas. That should slowly get better through the day as the storm winds down, road crews get out. If we can get some sunshine out, even though temperatures only be around 10 degrees, that'll definitely help as well. And I saw somebody, it just went off my feed of the comments here, mentioned the fog up in Union Springs, another report, fog in Elmira. There is going to be areas of fog as well tonight, especially where there's still some snowpack. That's kind of been the case through a lot of the day, and that just has to do with there being so much moisture in the atmosphere, and then as the temperatures cool, they're going to reach the dew points. So yes, there definitely we'll probably continue to see more and more fog as this event unfolds as well. Thank you for the report of 35 degrees in Auburn, Kelly. Definitely please continue to send me your reports even after this video. Continue to send me your questions, post comments on Facebook or the blog. I will be continuing to look at things throughout the evening, continuing to update the blog posts that I published this morning throughout the evening. Then again, tomorrow morning I'll have a new blog post looking at where the storm's at and where it's going. But the reports that people send me, especially in an event like this, where there's such a razor thin line between freezing rain or snow or ice and rain, those reports are so helpful. I really can't stress that enough, how helpful it is to know exactly what is going on and exactly where. So I definitely appreciate reports, and please continue to keep those coming in. Linda is asking, will everything be settled down for drive to Buffalo Sunday afternoon? Yes, Linda, winds should calm down tomorrow evening. Skies will gradually clear. There's going to be a little bit of lake effect Saturday night and early Sunday across especially the northern and central Finger Lakes. Not expecting very much in the way of accumulation, maybe another inch or two. But by Sunday afternoon, high pressure is going to build in, should pretty much squash that lake effect, and should get at least partial sunshine, if not full sunshine. The flip side of that is then Sunday night's going to be cold, clear skies, calm winds, and a fresh snowpack. That's going to send temperatures well below zero for Monday morning. So we've got about 7 more minutes left in the video. Let's just take another quick tour of what is going on across this entire storm. Make the temperature small. And let's decrease the density a bit. There seems to be a bit too much there. Okay. So we can see this, we can actually turn on the pressure lines too. Not very good. Sometimes the different fields don't match up with each other. But we've got this developing low pressure system moving out of Tennessee and into Kentucky. It's going to continue riding northeast along this front. As the front moves east through the region, the Finger Lakes is going to end up on the back side of this low in some of the heaviest precipitation. You can start to see the storm is wrapping up with widespread snow, some of it pretty heavy through Kentucky. Up into Ohio, there's some pretty dense blues there just to the west of Cincinnati. All this is going to move into the Finger Lakes region. For the next few hours, what we have to deal with is the remainder of the cold air coming in. These spotty rain showers will be replaced by some steady sleet and freezing rain. Overnight, that'll gradually turn over to snow. A lot of that snow will be very heavy throughout the night. Again, most of this, the changeover from ice to snow, is going to happen around midnight or later for most of the Finger Lakes, a little bit earlier towards the west. But once it does switch over, it's probably not going to switch back to sleet at all. Some very hefty snow amounts on the order of 15 to 20 inches across the north, central, northwestern Finger Lakes and along the shore of Lake Ontario. Lesser amounts to the south. Then the eastern Finger Lakes are where things are very tricky. A very tight gradient between heavy snow and mostly sleet. So it's very conceivable that a foot of snow might fall in some of these areas, and then you go 20, 30 miles to the east and they only get a few inches of snow. Where exactly that sets up, we're not going to know until the event is pretty much over tomorrow. So eastern Finger Lakes, these snow totals are definitely up for debate. Further west, higher confidence and some very significant snows in those areas. Make the temperatures big again. More dense. So temperatures in Rochester have finally reached the freezing mark. Let's see if there's any update to the type of precipitation falling there. Yes, Rochester is now reporting freezing rain. So right as temperatures hit that 32-degree mark, freezing rain for a little bit, then that should switch over to sleet, and then reds, and then eventually snow as well. Just a couple more minutes. I want to thank everybody again for tuning in for this hour-long video. Thank you all for using Finger Lakes Weather and for all the support. I've had a lot of people donating money to me today and yesterday. I'm extremely grateful for that. This live video and everything you're seeing now is a direct result of the donations. You can't see it, but I've got studio lighting, a nice screen behind me. Eventually I'm going to be using that as a green screen, so when I do these live videos I won't be sitting off here in the corner. I'll be in front of the map pointing things out. All that's coming from donations. I've got better audio quality, better video quality now. All that's through your support, so thank you so much for that. And it's also very helpful just for the time I spend to get back for some of that. Adam's asking, is there a fun name for when the temperature drops this fast? We got bomb cyclone a couple weeks ago. Of course, there was polar vortex a couple years ago. Sorry to disappoint you, Adam, but there isn't really a fancy, cool name for the media to latch onto with this one. It's something that we actually see fairly frequently here in the Finger Lakes. We get these strong cold fronts where temperature drops 10, 20 degrees in a matter of 30 minutes or so. But no fancy name for those ones, Adam. Okay, winding down now. Just a couple more minutes. Again, thank you all for tuning in. And thank you all for the reports as well. Thank you, Heidi, 34 in Farmington. That's good to know what's going on up there in that area, especially since the precipitation is starting to move back into there. Once it starts sleeting or freezing rain, let me know what it's doing up there, Heidi. That would be really good to know what's going on. Adam, who just asked about the fancy name for the temperature drop, says that we should invent one. So if it drops 30 degrees in 30 minutes, it's now the Drew drop. Maybe we can pencil that one in. Thank you for that, Adam. Joanna just joined in. That's fine. This video is going to be available afterwards as well, Joanna, so you can definitely go back and watch the first part as much as you want. But when's the forecast when it's going to turn dangerous in the Ithaca area? Originally I was thinking close to 7 o'clock, a little bit later now that we're expecting it, probably more like 8 o'clock and after is kind of when things are going to go downhill in the Ithaca area, Joanna. So thanks for stopping in. And here's one more quick look at the snow map before we log off. Again, I really want to stress the uncertainties in the eastern Finger Lakes here. It's going to be a very tight call between a lot of snow and not very much snow. So definitely tomorrow, once the snow stops during the late morning, let me know how much you got. It is going to be windy, so some of that snow is going to blow and drift around. If you take about 3 to 5 measurements in different parts of your yard, average those together, that's usually a pretty good way to get a general idea for about how much snow has fallen. And again, you can get all the information on this winter storm through the link in the video description on this live video feed, or you can just go to flxweather.com at any time for my latest forecasts. It's now 5:30, so I'm going to sign off. This is meteorologist Drew Montrell, and I hope everybody stays safe and stays warm during this event. And thank you very much for watching. Have a great night.